Hey everyone, how's things? I'm doing pretty good. So as you might have guessed from the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about some topics that bother me to some extent. These range from stuff about politics to how certain fandoms are behaving, and just some general gripes. I don't know exactly where this whole thing is going to take me. I'm just kind of writing out my thoughts, or I wrote out my thoughts. I tend to be like that, just write out my thoughts. Anyway, by the time I post this, I'll be sure to put place markers in the video timeline so you can skip to a topic that seems of particular interest to you. Also, I apologize if the sound is shitty. I don't have a good mic with me at this moment, but let's get to it. Topic number 1, Politicians, Part 1 of 3. Now, first let me make one thing clear. I don't think being a politician and forgetting to care about people are the same thing. There are plenty of politicians who do, even when there's plenty of reason for them to give up on humanity. Hillary Clinton should have thrown our asses under the bus a long time ago, but she keeps up the fight for what she believes is right. Why? Because she's basically a good person. Now, is she always right? No, of course not. Anyone who tells you otherwise is stupid. I think she, or rather her team, made plenty of bonehead mistakes during the 2016 race, and I realized that ultimately it was the Russian meddling and Comey that did her in. But I don't think she's entirely blameless. You see, Hillary Clinton knows a lot about the way things work, politically. It may not be the way some people would like them to work, but it is the reality of the situation. Now, let's suppose for a second that the 2016 race still had the same players, and the only difference was there was no email scandal and no Russian interference. I'm not entirely convinced that Hillary would have won. What's my reasoning? A lot of young folks, not all of them obviously, but a lot, liked the things that Bernie Sanders promised them. Free college? Hoorah! Free medical care? Yahoo! Breaking up the banks? Woohoo! The list goes on, but here's the problem with how it was presented. The reason that Sanders and Trump are the same person, just in different parties, most of these both of these balding men like to talk a big game, but neither of them really seems to have a clue of how to get things done. I can clearly recall watching the 2016 debates, and Bernie would be asked a very straightforward question, and he wouldn't answer it. He point-blank refused to answer the question. Why? Could it be that he didn't have a goddamn clue what he was talking about? Now, do I think he's a better man than President Trump? I do. Do I think he's a smarter man? Yes. Is he a major fucking asshole at times? You bet. Now, what does all this have to do with Hillary? Well, you see, during those same debates, if Hillary Clinton was asked a straightforward question, she would answer it. No trying to divert attention, no comparing hand size with any of her opponents. While Bernie and Trump made promises without any clear explanation of how they might eventually achieve those promises, Hillary explained as best she could the process by which such things could be possible. Just maybe could possibly just maybe be accomplished one day. Sorry. But here's the problem. Actually, there are two, come to think of it. Problem number 1. A lot of people, these kids today in particular, want instant satisfaction. I'm guilty of it too. I'm not going to act like some sort of perfect little saint. If I had any video effects software, this is where a halo would appear above my head. They want instant satisfaction, and they don't want to think about the fact that it will actually take some time to achieve these things. And sometimes it's the opposite. Some people have worked so long in a certain industry, coal for instance, that all they can hear when Hillary talks about renewable energy is, "We're coming to strip you of your jobs." When exactly did she say that? If anyone knows, send me the video and put a timestamp on it so I can hear the exact moment she said anything even remotely like that. As with everything else, she explained how it would happen. It wasn't going to happen right after she and her satanic cronies finished eating the sacrificial baby to celebrate her takeover of the nation. No, that's stupid. First they finish the baby, then they construct the plan. And who would be the most important people in this plan? The coal workers, of course. Hillary Clinton would work to ensure that none of those coal workers would be out of a job. It would probably take years, maybe even decades, to make a total switch from coal energy to renewable energy. So the way it would most likely work is the old timers who were already set in their ways would get to keep doing things the way they had always done them. All right. However, all them young whippersnappers would begin learning how to operate more environmentally friendly machines. Then, eventually, when old grandpa or grandma pass on and the family business is left to their grandkids, those grandkids will be fully schooled in the methods of environmentally friendly energy harvesting techniques. Not an overnight process. It would take a long time. People do die eventually, and as the old generation dies off, we can move towards a cleaner, healthier world for ourselves and the generation after us. Problem number 2. Hillary Clinton might be too smart for her own good. Even if people understand the basic idea that achieving things will take time, I did notice that she didn't always explain things in the simplest, dumbed-down terms. Not to insult people's intelligence, but I think a lot of people might not really be able to understand her when she talks. I didn't always, to be honest. So I think Hillary should have addressed us as though she was talking to people that didn't understand what she was talking about. Not like we were dumb or kids or anything, just like we didn't understand this particular thing. Not everyone's a policy wonk, Hillary. Now, of course, it would be dumb of me not to point out the fact that some people just hate powerful and talkative, aka bitchy women. That is a major fact, of course, but I think it's wrong to assume that's the only factor. Bernie and Trump promised their bases stuff, but didn't explain how it would be a long and difficult process. Don't think about it and it doesn't exist, basically. Hillary forced people to think about the idea of not having instant gratification, or about the idea that things would eventually change after the old folks were dead. And she did it in a way that would really only make sense to really smart people. The nerve. Lock her up! Lock her up! No, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, those are the biggest reasons I'm not entirely convinced that Hillary Clinton would have become president. Which is a perfect segue into Politicians Part 2 of 3. I have major gripes with both of the major parties. Okay? Now, of course, I have problems with the things that the Republicans are doing because of trying to strip women of their rights and locking up immigrants for no good reason, encouraging racism. And I understand not all of them are like that. Not all of a group is like everyone else in that group. So I disagree with most of what the Republicans stand for, but I can see that some of them are good people. I listen to Michael Medved, and I find myself agreeing with quite a few of the topics he brings up. Not all of them, but he's not the screaming chimp type of conservative. Not like Alex Jones. And I'm sorry, but aside from the Sandy Hook didn't happen shit, which is completely offensive, and he'll earn a free fast pass to hell, in my opinion, for saying that, the guy is a hoot. Don't believe me? Pause this video and search for Last Week Tonight Alex Jones. It's fucking hilarious, some of the shit he says. And it's not just about liberals either. Did you know George W. Bush was working with someone, might have been the UN, to murder at least 2 billion people in order to keep the population down? Yeah, it's true. Who knew Thanos was a Texan? If I had any video editing skills, this is where a photo of Thanos wearing a cowpoke hat and riding a horse would appear. However, I actually think I have a bigger problem with the Democrats, despite the fact that I consider myself one. Now, how can that be, you might be asking? How can I have a problem with something but still support it at the same time? Well, it's my opinion that if you really want something to succeed, that you'll be extra hard on it. If you really enjoy a particular TV show, for example, you'll notice its flaws. If it were just a show that you only occasionally watched, but didn't really care about, you might not notice the things that were wrong with it. Not everyone is going to be like this, of course, but I personally will notice the flaws in a show I enjoy. In fact, I'd argue that the more you take the time to point out the flaws, the more you enjoy the show. Pointing out something stupid about an episode of Star Trek doesn't make you a traitor to Trekkies everywhere. It just means that you love the show and you wish they had done better. It's a bit similar with Democrats, and all political parties, I suppose. I want them to succeed, so I'm more prone to getting mad when I notice them doing what I perceive to be dumbass things. Now, what would be an example of something that the Republicans seem to have gotten somewhat right, and the Democrats really don't seem to understand? People seem to be fed up with politics as usual. I can understand that. They want someone who isn't a politician to lead them. I totally get that. It's not the fact that Trump wasn't a politician prior to running for office that's the problem. If he was a man with strong moral fiber and actually seemed to give two shits about anybody besides himself and his rich buddies, that would be one thing. But he doesn't care about the little people, and if it seems like he does, there's always a catch. Tywin has figured out something that will benefit him in the long run. Actually, that's an insult to the memory of Tywin. Terrific. Terrific political strategist, one of the best, and his daughter, so hot. If she wasn't being banged by her brother, I'd probably be dating her. Ick. Anyway, the point is that it's not that Trump isn't a normal politician. It's the fact that he's not a good person. The guy is a dick. A very small one, but a dick nonetheless. If Trump had actually been a basically well-intentioned, good-hearted man, I still would have supported Hillary, but at least it wouldn't be so upsetting that he won. Now, why do I have a problem with the Democrats in this regard? While it is true that lots of everyday normal folks are running for smaller seats and even winning some of their races, as far as I can tell, the Dems aren't even attempting to search for regular folks to lead us as president. No, they just go to Elizabeth Warren and other establishment politicians. I'm pretty sure Senator Warren is the second most hated female politician in America after Hillary Clinton. And they want to run her in 2020? I'm all in support of an eventual Warren someone else ticket, but save it for another time. If people like the idea of having a normal everyday person lead them, give them what they want, and let the people choose. Line up a bunch of average folks from all walks of life who share one thing in common. They all have a strong knowledge of politics, and they're 100% willing to learn about the things they don't understand. At the present moment, I'm sorry to say that I could actually see the Republican Party doing that, and I don't see the Dems doing it. But just because the average president is a fairly average Joe or Jane, doesn't mean the rest of Capitol Hill would be comprised of riffraff. President Trump doesn't hire toothless hillbillies to run things. The people he hires may be corrupt and evil a lot of times, but they seem to have an understanding of what they're doing. So let's have a race in 2020 of average people versus establishment Democrats and see who the eventual winner is. Then, that average person who wins can be advised by establishment folks that they trust. You're not going to be kicked out, okay? Also, an average person wouldn't be beholden to anyone. They would win by the power of their ideals and their strong-hearted values. In 2024, if Trump is still president by then, an idea which is gross, but to be honest, part of me expects, let's have a race of entirely average Joes and Janes who all have better hearts and brains than Trump and see who the winner is that time. Once again, the winners can pick establishment candidates that they personally trust to head at least some of the positions. That way, it will be more equal. As an Alaskan Democrat, I heard Deborah Call speak at a fundraising event, and then after her, some dude spoke. He was so completely unimpressive, I can't even remember his name. I actually liked Deborah a lot. A lot more than the other guy, because he talked like a politician, like he was simply in it for himself, and once he got to the top, fuck all of us. Ms. Call, on the other hand, at least when I saw her, seemed to be a real person, like someone I would be perfectly happy to have over to my house for a barbecue. That's the reason I support her, and I hope she wins, along with Mark Begich. It's spell change that to Mark Bewitch in November. Now, to be honest, I don't recall actually hearing Mr. Begich speak, but if he had the wisdom to pick someone like Ms. Call to be his lieutenant governor, I think I can respect him. That's what I've come to the conclusion that I'll do. Vote for the person who appears the most normal, but also the most good. I'm not totally against the establishment, but I can understand why a lot of people are sick of them. Now, let's move on to the final gripe in this vein. Politicians Part 3 of 3. Now, to be entirely fair, this final point often seems to apply more to the citizens, though there are leaders in both parties who are guilty of it as well. I'm talking about the extreme levels of division amongst the parties. Now, I understand that it's unlikely, though not impossible, that you'll have a reasonable conversation with an extreme conservative who believes in no abortion under any circumstances, even if the mother might die, because, fuck her, right? Or an extreme liberal feminist, and I'll explain my use of air quotes in a little while, who unironically seems to think that women are always better than men simply by virtue of being women. People like that are too far gone to reason with. You can try, of course, but don't be surprised if they simply complain about you being mean, because, in all honesty, they have no desire or intent to listen. No, I'm talking about the complete and total refusal that some people seem to have these days to listen to anybody from the other side of the political aisle. everyone's stuck in their own little bubble. It seems hardly anyone is willing to listen to people from the other side, as though all Republicans are evil and my enemy. Fuck that noise. Fuck Republicans who act like Democrats are all evil too. I have no patience for that type of intolerance. Now, I think that Republicans who insist on continuing to suck the dick of the NRA despite all the school shootings are wrong. I think they don't understand the meaning of the Second Amendment. The founders didn't know that someday there would be yahoos with guns that would shoot 100 rounds a minute attacking schools. And I promise you, if George and all his pals could see the shameful way Republicans act around gun control, they would be shocked. I want you to listen, any conservatives who might be watching this. Okay? The Democrats aren't coming to take your hunting rifles or handguns. Unless you have a prior criminal record, that would be dumb. Some of you might need to hunt to feed your families. Maybe some of you live in dangerous neighborhoods. With any luck, you wouldn't need to use your gun, but if a pedophile breaks into your house and tries to rape your kid while you sleep, do you think they're going to wait while you call the cops? No. If you live in a place where that's more than likely to happen, first of all, I'm sorry, and I hope you can move to a better place. And secondly, I totally understand the need for a gun, but you don't need an AK-47 to hunt deer or shoot a rapist. If you do, then you're an insult to even the poorest of Mark's folks. But get some training in proper weapon handling. No one except a soldier needs a high-powered machine gun. Alright? Now, I'm going to do something that a lot of folks don't seem willing to do. If any folks viewing this do believe that the average citizen needs machine guns in their home, by all means, feel free to explain why in the comments below. I do my best to reply to all the comments I receive. I think that if people who aren't in the military want to use machine guns, they should be kept locked up at shooting ranges. Basically, any weapon that you can squeeze the trigger and have it fire continuous rounds doesn't belong in the hands of anyone not in the military. But go ahead and explain to me, reasonably, why I'm wrong. I promise I'll reply reasonably. Now, you see what I did there? I committed to discussing opposing viewpoints with another person like a human being. I'm not going to have a talk with a politician who locks up people based on where they come from. But if I met an average citizen who said, "I hate Mexicans," I'd say, well, let's talk about that. What makes you hate Mexicans? Then it's up to the hater of Mexicans to come up with a reason why they hate all Mexicans. And just because... Spell check. Just because you were robbed by one gang of people who just happen to be of Mexican descent doesn't mean they're all bad hombres. Don't be a bigoted ass, okay? If you can't come up with a better reason to hate foreigners or LGBT folks or want women to be paid less, then, well, the conservatives always say that's how it should be, maybe you need to start thinking for yourself. Okay? On a different but similar note, I think it would be moronic to let all foreigners in. There should be some sort of vetting process. That seems reasonable. What's unreasonable is the fact that much of the time the government doesn't seem to have any interest in helping people, especially the black and brown variety. Doesn't have an interest in helping them come to this country. Or at least the Republicans don't. Extremes on either side are wrong. I also have no patience for extremists on either side of the... I have no patience for extremists on either side of the political aisle. because you can't reason with an extremist. So try to take the time to listen to people with different points of view. Don't be married to your values. Don't be so married to your values that you can't even talk to people who don't go along with your own rigid views. Because if you can't talk to people on the other side, how can you hope to change their minds? You won't succeed all the time on all levels, but you might make someone rethink some things. Just be reasonable. Now that we've finished talking about politicians and other related subjects, let's go on to talk about the next topic, which is, to think of it after writing this script, it is sort of political. Anyway, topic number 2, SJWs. I have no problem with the basic idea of fighting for social justice. I think everyone should be granted equal rights. I agree that there's no such thing as true equality. Men and women are different, blacks and whites are different, everyone is different. You could say that our differences are the only thing that make us truly equal. And besides, who wants to be equal? To be the same as everyone else? Fuck that noise. Equal rights, yes. Equal as in all the same? No way. Any politician who suggests that they think of equality in the latter terms is really bad at explaining themselves. Now, just a little side note here. If you don't believe me that there's no such thing as equality, 100% equality between men and women, for example, imagine the following scenario. A well-intentioned father tells his daughter, you can do anything, little Susie. Well, later on, little Susie grows up and discovers that despite what her trusted pops told her, that she can't make a donation at her local sperm bank. By the same token, as much as he wants to, poor little Billy will never become pregnant, even if he becomes a trans woman. Sometimes life sucks. So, anyway, let's get back to social justice warriors. To me, a social justice warrior is a person, probably white, who feels as though they can speak for people who aren't like them. If a white man thinks he has any business saying what the life of a black woman is like, he's being a social justice warrior. This is especially bad if, as I suspect many of the so-called warriors don't, he has no black woman friends. I'll bet you a lot of these people just want to feel like they belong to some righteous group, and so they join up and carry their signs and shout their slogans without any real understanding of the things that the people they're supposedly fighting and being offended for are going through. And how sexist, too. She's a black woman. She doesn't need some white dude to be offended on her behalf, especially when they don't even know each other. At least have the courtesy to talk with her and ask her if she's actually offended by whatever you're being offended by today. Now, let me tell you how I do things. If I have a question pertaining to a certain group of people, blacks, women, transgender folks, anyone who isn't a white, non-religious male, I'll seek out someone from that group and ask them the question. I had a question related to trans folks recently, and so I waited till I was attending a fandom convention where I knew that one of the merchandise hall vendors would be a trans woman, and I asked her. As much as I respect my family on issues related to women, because the older adults in my house are all women, I'm not going to take their opinions on trans folks completely at face value. Unless maybe I'd be more inclined to take it slightly more seriously if they happen to have any transgendered friends at some point that I just happen to have forgotten about at the moment. If, however, they were to tell me that something was supposedly offensive to trans folks, I would then take it upon myself to do further research and maybe even find a trans man or trans woman, online or in the case of the fan convention, offline, to explain to me the deeper reasons, for instance, why being called tranny is offensive to them. In all honesty, I'm not entirely sure that it is. I haven't actually heard for certain from a trans person that it is. And I have to wonder, is this something that politically correct SJWs came up with? I don't know for sure. I would guess it's one of those words that people not belonging to that particular group shouldn't use. But I'm not totally sure about that. We'll talk more about so-called bad language later on. Now, I should mention here that I should have gotten myself a bottle of water, but because of the program I'm using to record this, I can't really stop. So if I sound like I'm straining a bit, I apologize. Excuse me. Anyway, oh my god, it's 31 minutes already. I should mention here that I should mention a person I watch on YouTube. He's a young man who uses a dog with sunglasses named Rags as his avatar. I've never actually seen a photo or video of the person behind the animal, but I enjoy a lot of what he has to say. Most of his videos are related to gaming, and the often unreasonable way that SJWs treat gamers. I don't agree with all his points. Sometimes it feels as if he doesn't acknowledge that there is such a thing as sexism, for example. Obviously not everything is sexist, but some things are. One thing I completely agree with him about, though, is when he tears into SJWs for throwing a fit because some game that was marketed as historically accurate, set in ancient Norway or Scotland or something, didn't have any black characters. I won't say that there were no black folks in those countries at the time, but SJWs want to rewrite historical facts in order to make themselves feel better. There's a perfectly legit reason that Lord of the Rings doesn't feature any prominent black characters. By the way, good on Peter Jackson and the film crew for making the movies far less racist than the books, because the orcs were described, I think, as being black-skinned, and I think I remember some other monsters being described as being yellow or something. Not cool, Mr. Tolkien. Be that as it may, it was based off real medieval times, as is Game of Thrones. I'm sure there were slaves, but not a lot of black folks in positions of power in medieval Europe. But I remember seeing one of his videos, at least I think it was one of his, where he showed footage from some Lord of the Rings based RPG that featured, among other things, a black guy in a position of respect. I can't recall Rag saying anything about the guy having to escape from bondage or anything like that. No, he was already set. If something unfavorable happened in history, a lot of SJWs want to cover it up and not even acknowledge it. Idiots. That's how these bad things keep happening, because you insist on just moving on without examining the real issues. And one could argue that in the case of fictional stuff like Lord of the Rings, that it's more reasonable to rewrite the narrative to fit a more progressive, forward-thinking modern viewpoint. I could see that making sense. But how about reality-based games? I find it totally understandable when Rags talked about it being perfectly reasonable. The gamers were pissed when it came to Battlefield 5 or something. Sorry if I got that wrong. Which was a World War II game supposedly meant to be accurate, featuring a disabled woman with bionic legs fighting on the front lines. And it featured other stupid shit as well. Now, did women fight in World War II? You bet your ass. But I'm going to bet that not a lot of them were firing guns alongside the men on the front lines. Queen Elizabeth drove an ambulance, but I think that it might have been pretty close to the front lines, but she didn't shoot the enemy from a foxhole. You know why? Because women weren't allowed to do that back then. It's not sexist to create a World War II game that's supposedly based in reality and not feature a female character with a fucking bionic leg who shoots Nazis alongside all the guys. And I'll bet she doesn't need any help from any man. Even if she's 2 seconds away from being shot in the face and some man hurls his trusty switchblade straight into the enemy's face, which is stupid, but the rest of the game sounds stupid too, so let's just go with it. Even if a fellow soldier saved her life, she would say, I don't need help, just because he was a man. Now, you know what would be totally acceptable from my point of view in a reality-based World War II game? Feature a female character who goes in and drives an ambulance. And just to make it more exciting, have her get chased by Nazis and other enemies. Drive your way through a perilous obstacle course where you could get killed at any second. Give her a gun if you want. You'd have to steer with one hand and shoot bad guys with the other. I'm not a shooting gamer, or any kind of gamer, really. But if I was, that would be dope. Then you switch back to the male character. It's unreasonable to act like women had no part in World War II, or in any war. But it's also unreasonable to act like they had a larger part than they actually did. If you want to make an alternate version of World War II, fine. But that's not what this game was sold as. It was sold as reality-based, but that's not what players got. Fuck that shit. I understand why you're mad, dude. I'm not done with you yet, though. Just sit and stay, because I'll be calling you in a second. If Rags makes a response video, this would be the part where I laugh at his lack of control of fingers because he can't flip me off for those dog jokes without them. Or he just whips out his big-ass dog dick and waves it at me. Nice, dude. SJWs also want to control the words that people can use. Which brings me to topic number 3, so-called bad language. I've always been a fan of George Carlin. Well, not always, but at least from the time I was about 18, I think. There's no one I know of who's done more to point out the complete absurdity of the idea of bad words than George Carlin. The 7 dirty words you can't use on TV? Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. Now, he acknowledges that some of them are more offensive, like cocksucker and motherfucker, for instance, but other words, such as tits, don't belong on a list like that. Because tits sounds like a snack food. Can it be used for sexist purposes? Sure. But is anyone going to break down and fall into a vegetative state just because they heard someone say the word tits? I don't think so. And I can't recall exactly which stand-up performance this was from. I think I found it by searching George Carlin -political correctness on YouTube. He was doing a monologue about how some people will just get offended at everything these days, You're not allowed to say this, not allowed to say that. And, sorry, I'm kicking myself for not remembering water. And this is the only part of the monologue I can remember word for word. There is nothing wrong with the word nigger in and of itself. It's the racist asshole who's using it that you want to be concerned about. Now, he's completely right. However, he's also a white guy, so as stated previously, I'm not going to take his word totally to heart. Now, let's take another stand-up comic, a black guy, Chris Rock. Rock said in one of his shows, once again, I don't remember which one it was, that the word nigger used to actually mean an ignorant person of any race. Being a nigger didn't mean you were black. It just meant you were ignorant. Somewhere along the line, however, it got turned into an insult that was used to attack black folks for the color of their skin. So now it's not good to use it unless you happen to be black. Isn't that interesting how an insult that was formerly unbiased became biased? I would argue that all those racist white white nationalists, who march around and hurl insults and worse at black folks are the real niggers. Now, why would I be willing to accept Chris Rock's word about the history of the word nigger? Because he's a black man. I trust him to know about this stuff. I disagree with Carlin when he said, "We don't have a problem with Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor using the word." Why? Because they're niggers. No, they aren't. They're both smart people. Unless he happens to think that Eddie and Richard are ignorant fools, but I don't think he does. I think he believes he's dead, that being a nigger and being black are the same thing. That's wrong. He may be my favorite comedian, but I can still acknowledge his many faults. Now, I'm guessing that quite a few of you are uncomfortable with my insistence on not disguising nigger by calling it the N-word. Maybe you're even completely downright offended. How dare I use such bad language? So disrespectful. Here's the thing. I would never use a word like nigger as an insult, unless I was singing along to a song by a black artist where it was being used as such. The explicit version of Beyonce's Irreplaceable comes to mind. In the closet, that's my stuff, yeah, ibabad, nigga, please don't touch. And I could be misinterpreting the use of the word, but it sounds like an insult to me in that case. Now, would I use it if Eminem or some other white singer used it? No, I wouldn't, because it's a hateful racial slur in the hands of a white person, and I respect black people. However, if I'm singing along with a song by an awesome black artist like Queen Bee, and she uses the word nigger either positively or negatively in her song, I'm going to sing along with her, because I respect her. But why would I insist on using it here, or on a comments thread? Well, let's do some comparison. Listen to this. This is me pretending to be a racist asshole. All them fucking dirty niggers are bringing crime into our clean white neighborhoods. Them porch monkeys are gonna run off with our daughters and create a demon hybrid race. I sound like a total freak, right? Now, listen to this. This is actually something that I might write on a blog in response to a racist. You know, nigger actually used to mean an ignoramus of any race. Isn't that interesting? Heard that from Chris Rock. I know he's funny, but he's black, so I trust him about these kind of things. Now, tell me why you hate black folks. Let's see if we can't work through your hate. I won't judge. Just talk to me reasonably. See the difference? One is very clearly a bigot who hates people who don't fit in with his racist, narrow worldview, and the other person is educating a bigot. I wouldn't use the N-word around black people unless they all said it was fine. But if I'm by myself on my computer trying to educate people, I'm going to use the language that I'm talking about, because I'm not afraid of language. It's not about the words. It's about the people using them. Are you a racist, misogynistic asshole? Yes? Then stay away from those words. Are you a person who values people of different races and women? Yes? Then it's fine to acknowledge that those words exist on occasion. Another black guy who made an excellent point about the word nigger was featured in one of Rags' videos. I can't recall which one at this point. Please make a response video to this. Anyway, this seemingly average black American citizen said something to the effect of, if someone wants to try to insult me based on the color of my skin, I'm not going to let that bother me. Because, first of all, is that all you've got? Really, it says more about the other person. At least insult me for something real. You think I'm insulted by being a black man? I'm proud of it. If you're so lame that the only insult you can think of is if you're so lame that that's the only insult you can think of, have at it. Doesn't bother me. Because words only have power if you let them have power. Exactly. Now, I acknowledge I couldn't remember his exact words, but that was the gist. Now, I know I've been focused on this word, and it's an important word for sure, but there are plenty of others to unpack. However, I won't go into as much detail on them, but let's go over a few of them. Bitch. I love bitches. I know that most people think that bitch means mean woman. That's wrong. It means a powerful woman who knows what she wants. Strong. Admirable. I didn't go to public school, but I can assure you if I did, all my female pals would have been classified by the other kids as bitches. I have no patience for bimbos. Bitches are awesome. Bimbo is a much bigger insult. Now, are there mean bitches? Of course. Cersei Lannister comes to mind. She's powerful, knows what she wants. She's also an extreme asshole. Seriously, I hope Dany's dragons burn her to a crisp and feed on her corpse. Now, you might think I'd call her a bitchy cunt, but you'd be wrong. I'll explain why in a minute. Moving on to the next bad word, retard. Now, from everything I've heard, this expression seems to mean someone with a mental block or someone who's simply an idiot. Now, would I use it to insult a person with a mental block? Of course not. But would I use it on someone who insisted that all feminists are man-hating cunts? Yeah, I would. That's retarded. You don't know all feminists. The so-called feminists will have their day to shine in the next section. Fag. Here's how I respond if someone calls me a fag on YouTube, for example. Fag is British slang for cigarette. So, are you saying I'm smoking, chap? Jolly good. I commend you for your excellent observational skills. I'm just obnoxiously polite. Try to bother me. Hurl insults at me. You're not going to bother me. If you insult my friends or family members, I will have something to say. Don't insult them. Cunt. Now, admittedly, this is a word that I really can't find a positive spin on. It basically means the same thing as calling a guy an asshole. So, isn't it a bit like the female version of calling a waiter, isn't it a little like calling a waiter a waitress? Why is server not good enough for both of them? A person who brings you food and drink in a restaurant is a server, and a person who treats other people poorly is an asshole. No reason to make any distinction between male assholes and female assholes. Now, if I was with a woman who asked me to use the word cunt in terms of dirty talk, I would use it, but only if it were a woman. Trans women would count as well. If a man uses it to insult a woman, that's not cool. Dyke. I was raised in a wonderful family, or I am raised in a wonderful family of lesbians, and as such, one of my personal favorite adult comic strips when I was an older teenager, and adult means mature, not sexual, was Dykes to Watch Out For by Alison Bechdel. Check it out. The complete collection is on Amazon. It's funny and informative. It was explained to me that dyke wasn't a word I should use out in the world, but I wasn't told to call it D words to watch out for. Okay? I know there are plenty of other insulting words out there. I can't cover all of them. All I can do is advise anyone watching this video to try and not let insults bother them. Turn it into a joke, or just pretend they didn't even use the insult. Try acting nice to the jerk in return, and they'll either give up and move on to weaker prey, or they'll start being nice back, and you might discover they're actually a decent person underneath it all. Both things have happened to me. What's the expression? Kill them with kindness? Yeah, do that. However, I would like to talk about one more word that's not always considered nice. Pussy. Now, if someone is using this word to insult someone's courage, that's not cool. However, personally, I should think that being told I had balls would be more insulting. I mean, kick a guy in the nuts and he becomes a quivering, weeping, gasping pile of sweat and possible barf. Pussies are awesome. They're so much more capable than balls. I realize it's not an insult to say you have big balls or a big anything physical, but it seems like it would be more reasonable to use balls as an insult than pussy. Now, as for the sexual use of the word, I will admit that this used to be a word I insisted on not using. I thought that it was just as bad as cunt. But it was a term that only disrespectful men used when talking about women they wanted to fuck. But then, eventually, I started to realize that some women used it to describe their vaginas too. So, I thought, well, if it's used by women, and even cool women, then is it really so bad? As far as I can tell, it's really the most common euphemism for a vagina, at least in America. I don't know about other places, and I have to say I fully embrace the use of pussy as a positive term after the rise of pussy hats. Those women and men were all fighting for the safety and respect of women, and they all agreed to wear something called a pussy hat. Therefore, it must be a respectful, even admirable word. I still like to joke about the term eating pussy. I don't want to eat your pussy. I happen to like cats. I'll eat your muffin, though. And I don't consider it an insulting word when used as a euphemism for a vagina anymore, I've actually come to consider it admirable. And no, that is not a license to make bad sex puns, but I know some of you are going to do it anyway. Let's move on to the next topic. Topic number 4. Modern so-called feminists. And I apologize for the fact that it's very obvious I'm reading a script, but it's just the program I have to use at the moment. God, it's 54 minutes already. Yikes. So anyway, topic number 4, modern so-called feminists. Now, I have to bring up another thing that I partially agree with Rags on and I partially disagree with him on. From what I've heard, he basically seems to be under the impression, as I said earlier, that all feminists are man-hating cunts. I don't think he's ever actually said that in those terms, but that's kind of the feeling I get when I hear him talk about feminists. Rags, sweetie, let me tell you why that line of thinking is totally wrong. Now, those women, like Arnita Sarkeesian and other vloggers and bloggers, aren't real feminists. If anything, they're an insult to feminists. Okay? Those assholes give decent, hard-working feminists a bad name. Why, I hear you asking? I'm just kidding, my hearing's not that good. Well, from all the clips I've seen you play of these complete dipshits, they seem to unironically think that women are better than men simply by virtue of being women. I joke sometimes about how women are so much more awesome than men, and I'm not insulting any gay men, trans men, or bisexual dogs. I just think women are cool. However, these internet feminists, why don't we call them I-feminists, actually seem to have taken that notion seriously. What makes a real feminist? A real feminist, at least from my point of thinking, believes in fair and equal treatment of both sexes. Now, I think reasonable people can all agree that that's an admirable goal to strive for. So, in other words, an I-feminist is not a feminist. She's an insult to everything that real feminists have fought for, because I-feminists just try to put men down, thereby making them hate women even more. Real feminists work with men and teach them how to be respectful and upstanding citizens, and hopefully those same men will then take what they've learned and use it to teach other men about respect. But not before stealing the idea, writing a book about it, and taking all the credit. Well, let's hope not. Finally, and I'm sure there are other things I could think of to gripe about, but at least this is the last thing I can think of for now. Topic number 5, Bronies. Now, I'm a fan of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Have been since around mid-2011 or so. However, I've come to realize that some of the community itself is not as forward-thinking as they would have you believe. Take the name of the fandom itself, Bronies. The word bro is right in the title. Now, I understand that this was meant to be an acknowledgement of the ironic fact that the bulk of the adult fan base is made up of men. I honestly don't know how much of the fan base is adult women. Let's just say 20% for now. And personally, I don't like the word brony. To me, it feels like using the word mankind to describe all of humankind, or humanity if you want to simplify it even further. There is a female term for female fans of the show. Some of them call themselves Pegasisters. Now, if there were an all-encompassing word for both men and women, I wouldn't have a problem with the fandom calling themselves Bronies. There's not though. And I've heard some women insist on being called Bronies. Why? Don't you have any more respect for yourselves than that? Why do you want to join the boys club? Do you think you'll get more respect if you call yourself a brony? I don't think so. Furthermore, they're the only fan base I know of who insists on using a gendered term to describe themselves. Let's look at a few others. Furries. There's absolutely nothing about that word that implies that only guys can enjoy writing about and dressing up as writing about drawing and dressing up as anthropomorphic animals. If they call themselves the Good Boy Society or Not Tires, ouch, then I would consider that a gendered term. But they use an all-exclusive term because furries are cool and largely more inclusive than bronies. Although, as one brony-centric YouTuber named Moliminous once pointed out, bronies are just diet furries. Feel free to make a response video if you wish. Trekkies. Again, that doesn't sound like a gendered term. If they were to insist on being called Kirkers or Spockers as a whole, then I could see how it might be surmised that only geeky basement-dwelling dudes were into space adventuring. Not true. There are plenty of geeky basement-dwelling... What even is the female version of a dude? Anyway, moving on. Marshmallows. I'm one of these. For those who may not know, apparently it's what fans of Veronica Mars call themselves. I'm pretty sure there's nothing sex-based about being called a marshmallow. Okay, they're sweet and creamy and... Okay, maybe there is something sexual about it. Ew. But at least there's nothing gender-specific about being compared to a tasty campfire treat. True believers or Marvelites. Again, nothing that would lead anyone to think that only guys are allowed to like Marvel Comics or the MCU. Truthfully, I don't know what fans of DC Comics call themselves. Beliebers. I'm sorry, this is dumb as fuck, but at least there's nothing to say only tween girls like the Beebs. And finally, at least that I can think of for now, Little Monsters. Lady Gaga fans eat Bieber fans for breakfast. So much cooler. I'm just kidding with all of you believers. Like who you like, I won't judge you. But your fandom name is stupid and ours rocks, like the free bitch herself. Long live Mother Monster. Point is, no one ever said only gay men could be monsters. Anyone can be a little monster. So, I really don't have any thoughts about an alternative expression that could be simple yet all-inclusive for bronies. I just referred myself as an MLP fan. But even more so than the name is the fact that some of the bronies and even some of the Pegasisters are just a bunch of whiny conservative assholes. Some of them I have respect for, such as Dr. Wolf or Brent Wilson. He may have his faults, but I think he's ultimately a good person with good intentions. If he runs for office someday, I can imagine that he'd make a decent Republican president. I think he's a Republican. I don't know that totally for sure, and I already know what his campaign slogan would be. Say it with me, every pony. 1, 2, 3. It's good to be helping. But then there's also Firebrand, or Joshua Burner. I'm not entirely sure Burner is his real surname. Josh is basically only good for the occasional laugh. As a person, he's an asshole. A conservative far-right asshole. He never learns from his mistakes, and he never seems to grow as a person. He's got a major victim complex. He's just a pain, and I don't understand why Dr. Wolf is friends with him. You're better than that, Doc. And I don't think you'll respond to this video because you'd have to edit out all the unchristian words, but if you want to, you're certainly welcome. You too, Josh. Come at me, bro. I still think you're a humongous stallion-sized cock for trying to silence Lilly, and by extension, the victims of Toon Critic's pedophilic crimes, but you can make a response video if you want. Now, I don't hate the entire MLP fandom. I think they have a lot of problems for sure, but I admire some of the things they do. Every year since 2015, I've attended Seattle's MLP convention, Everfree Northwest, which is held in mid-May, and totally awesome even if you don't watch the show. And every year they hold auctions and donate the proceeds from said auctions to the Seattle Children's Hospital. Good for them. However, my personal favorite MLP-centric YouTuber, however, she does do other stuff. Thank God the script is almost over. I'm kicking myself. Is named Lilly Orchard, formerly known as Lily Pete, who was formerly known as Jerry Pete. She's a trans woman who hasn't completed her transition yet. I don't know if she ever intends to, but I respect her pronouns and refer to her as a woman. Now, for those of you who don't know about Lily, she's infamous for stirring up trouble in the Brony community. In other words, she doesn't let the other Bronies get away with any of their shit. Bronies and YouTubers in general, for the most part, are total wimps when it comes to confrontation of any kind. Honestly, I think Dr. Wolf is mostly sweet gentleman, but the dude would tuck tail and whimper like an omega if you tried to confront him about something he might have done wrong. Although, to be fair, when Toon Critic's behavior was discovered, when Toon Critic's behavior was discovered, look it up, after Brent produced a faith-based healing video, he did eventually realize that it was wrong to take this kind of approach. And he and Josh made an apology video, and at the time, I thought they both seemed genuine. Brent looked embarrassed, to be honest. Not long after that, though, Josh sent Lily a cease and desist letter that he created himself because she insisted on pointing out how much of an ass he had been about the Toon Critic situation, basically victim blaming and all that good Christian shit. As Lily pointed out in a recent video, and I'm paraphrasing here a little, your actions speak louder than your words. It doesn't matter what you meant to do. It matters what you actually did. If you really have changed, prove it. I fucking love you, man. I know you may be an uptight jerk sometimes who's not always good at playing with others and may have possibly blocked me on Tumblr because we had a little disagreement, but I still love you. If Lily makes a response video, I believe this is the part where she'd say something along the lines of, "Fuck this prick with pubic hair on his smug face." I'm sorry I don't have any skills when it comes to complex video editing. I'll include links to all the channels I mentioned. Yeah. Now, I would be wrong not to point out that Lily herself once wrote a fan fiction story that involved child characters from MLP in sexual relationships with adults. At least that's how I understand it. She has taken it down, but she's never apologized for her actions. But, as far as I know. But I think that, like she said, actions speak louder than words. She's been one of the most vocal people about Toon Critic. And I'll just call him Zach, so as not to glorify him, and because that's his real name. She also goes after the Bronies, who act as though it was a bigger crime that Zach would possibly give Bronies a bad name than the fact that he was caught sexting minors. He was also a completely emotionally abusive dickhole to grown women, too. he can't come after me because he's deleted all of his social media and is hopefully on the run. Best of luck to the police in catching him. But whereas Lilly only wrote a story about kids having sex with adults, which isn't cool, to be no doubt, she did erase it, suggesting that she had learned from her past actions and turned over a new leaf to devote herself to helping victims of a real pedophile. And I'm not suggesting she became the Brony equivalent of Olivia Benson or anything. That'd be stupid. But Zach, he never learned shit from his actions because he didn't have to. His pals were all too thin-skinned to tell him he was a bad person. Or his former pals, I guess. And to all of you who acted like smearing the good name of Brony was more insulting than the fact that he was a pedophile, fuck you with a big horse dildo from Bad Dragon. Lilly stirs up trouble. Doesn't let the rest of the fandom get away with being whiny little shits. And although she can be hard-headed at times, I have great respect for her. So, that's the end of my rant video. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least were given a few things to think about. Just to make it clear, anybody and everybody is perfectly welcome to make a response video to this. I won't have time to make response videos to your response videos, but if you send me links, I will watch all of them. And I always try to respond to all of the comments sent my way. And in particular, I hope that Rags and maybe Lilly make response videos. I'll understand if that doesn't happen, but I enjoy listening to what both of you have to say on social issues and just the issues of being good people. Let's all try to be good people, why don't we? And now I will go and attempt to upload this very long video with the blazing slow internet speed in Alaska. Ta-ta. Minute and 12 seconds.